This is hypnotic authenticity. This is a space for inner clarity, where hypnosis meets self-inquiry, where the stories that you carry can become gentle invitations for change. We're going to explore identity, emotional harmony, and authentic living through subtle, mindful approaches and a really, really good sprinkling of hypnosis. So take a slow, deep breath and let's begin. I'm going to talk about pain today. I'm going to talk about emotional pain. I'm going to talk about psychic pain. This is purely my personal understanding. And I'm talking quite specifically about this somewhat long-standing experience that I had that began with a massive, massive psychological pain, which was what, is hard to describe, but people call it an awakening, an emancipation, staring yourself in the mirror and becoming more self-aware or peeling away some of the layers of the onion. So for me, this was an extremely, extremely painful experience. It was very, very scary, completely pulled out the foundations of everything that I thought I knew. And so none of my education could help me. None of what I thought I knew, everything that I thought I knew somehow had led me to this situation of psychic fracture, emotional fracture. And so I knew what not to do. I knew that there was a problem with something within what it was that I was doing, but I had absolutely zero idea where to go with that. When you don't know what to do, when you find yourself in a situation where you have to question, and when you feel on fire, you tend, or I at least, you tend to reach out, right? You tend to look for solutions beyond yourself because everything that you thought you knew how you could fix yourself doesn't seem to work. It's not making sense. And so you tend to look outside. For some reason, I chose the route that I chose. Maybe that was my personal wiring. Maybe that was some stories from the past of how to cope in extreme situations. Maybe it was divine intervention. I have no idea. When you're in psychic pain inside yourself, when you are desperately in need of some form of relief and you don't know what to do inside of yourself, you'll probably do lots of things just to see if any of them might work. So you might desperately seek solace in other people. You might try and find a group that might be experiencing something similar. You might go and ask a doctor, please help me. You might try and find someone in a position of authority who apparently knows what it is that they're doing and they've gone through something similar, and you kind of ask them for help. I was lucky in that I found a book. So I found a group. I was so desperate to get outside of myself. I was like, I must go and at least talk to someone else as a way of kind of self-stroking, self-soothing, just getting out of this for a moment. And I happened to find a group that sounded intrinsically as if they might be able to help. And it was a group that was doing something called nonviolent communication. And I had never heard of nonviolent communication. And so I signed up for this thing. And then I thought, well, if I'm going to go, I do at least need to know what on earth it is that they're talking about. And so I got the book. The book is written by a guy called Marshall Rosenberg. And my life was so painful at that moment. I couldn't even sit and read a book. It wasn't possible. But I did manage to download the audiobook version of it. And I listened to the book. And I started listening at midnight. And I just carried on going. I actually went the entire way through the night. I think it took about 6 or 7 hours to finish the book. And at the end of which, it got so interesting that I ended up writing masses and masses and masses of notes about the way that you relate to yourself, about the way that you speak to yourself, and about the way that you relate to others and speak to others. And I found it extraordinarily, revelatory, I think is probably the best way to describe it. I tried doing things like art therapy, painting your expressions, painting your emotions, and sharing it with people to see how they respond. I tried just anything that I could because I had no idea what to do. One of the things that I did was to reach out to a doctor. I went to a GP. I was in floods of tears. I was like, my entire sense of everything is on fire. I don't know what's going on. So I go to a doctor who obviously, because this is what doctors do, they refer you to a psychotherapist because a psychotherapist will know the answer. And she prescribed me some form of antidepressant or psychic medicine of some sort. And this is an authority figure who's doing this. It's also a GP, right? I'm not sure a generalist should be doing that. But anyway, she did. So I think, well, obviously, if the expert says this is making sense, then maybe it'll make sense. And I remember going to the chemist afterwards. I went to the pharmacist, and she gave me this box, and she looked at me, and she said, no, because it was quite clear I had no idea what the hell was in this box. And I'm so grateful for the pharmacist for basically kind of pulling the emergency cord and saying, now, are you aware what this is? And the look on her face said a lot, that this is powerful stuff. And I never took any of those tablets because the fire that was in my life was so valuable. I didn't want to numb it away. I didn't want it to go anywhere. I wanted to understand it. I wanted to fix it. I wanted it to stop, but I did not want to numb it away. And there's a conclusion from that. I reckon if I had numbed the pain away, I reckon if I had avoided everything that was screaming at me, the me that you see today in front of you on this video wouldn't be here. In fact, none of these videos would be here. In fact, I wouldn't be a hypnotherapist. In fact, I would never have helped anybody. In fact, I would still be angry and lost and frustrated and numb. I think that would have all come from avoiding the fire, which was the truth in every pore of my body, in every cell of my body. As I say, your mileage may vary, and I'm not saying that this is a conclusion that everybody should come to. But for me personally, the idea of numbing that truth away would have been a desperate attempt to fix myself without changing. A desperate attempt to numb away the feeling without addressing the reasons behind the feeling. So I reckon I probably, from that, would have ended up with a self-soothing strategy that worked a little bit, that left me in a state of constant but slightly numbed pain. Now, I'm speculating because I didn't go down that route. But I know I wouldn't have gone through the awakening. I'm absolutely certain I wouldn't have had the moment of questioning myself, of starting to understand myself, of trusting my feelings as well as my intellect, and coming to conclusions of self-acceptance, self-awareness, self-love. And if I hadn't had that moment myself, I wouldn't have been able to understand anybody else going through something similar. So of all the people that I've touched ever since, I don't want to make this into a God complex thing, but think of all the people that these videos have touched. If one of those people has been touched in a way which causes them to think about themselves in a different way, the world is a better place. And none of that would have happened if I had followed the automatic knee-jerk response of the GP and the psychotherapist. I had to say no. I had to say very violently, strongly, absolutely not. This is not what I want. I do not want to numb this feeling. I want to understand it. I want to deal with it, and I want to get to the bottom of it. And Lord knows where that's going to go. That probably came from my way of dealing with stuff. Yeah. And somebody else's way of dealing with stuff is going to be different. So maybe for somebody else, the medication is a good thing. I'm not saying it's not a good thing. But for me personally, it would have been the worst thing in the world. What I needed was to stare myself in the mirror and to cry my eyes out and to hug myself and to understand all of the stuff that I was desperately struggling against, that I was desperately hiding in a corner of my mind. All of the comfortable delusions had to come crashing down. There was no alternative, because the end result then is the truth. I think sometimes about conscience. Our conscience always has a moral barometer. No matter how much we might lie to ourselves, there is an element inside of us that is true to our core values. It's there, and it speaks. It might speak very, very quietly, but it is there. And it is our heart. There is an element inside of us that says we know what's right, what's wrong for us. It might be deluded, but it feels. The problem is we're so much in our intellect that we stop that feeling, or we stop the relationship between the two. The balance gets out of kilter, and we end up in, well, in my case, in screaming pain, in fractured pain. Ultimately, what I'm saying is, when you don't know what to do, when you're scared to follow yourself, because that seems to have led you to where you are, and therefore you don't know, and you're seeking solutions outside of you. It's okay to seek solutions outside of you. It's okay to seek feedback. But there is a layer beneath what you think is you. And it is damned uncomfortable to go there. It is damn scary to go there. But I have never, ever, ever, with any person that I've ever worked with, and certainly with myself too, ever known that deep, frightened, in a child, in a fear, in a pain, whatever, to not at some level be truly, truly beautiful. I heard once when someone was going to a psychotherapist that they go to a psychotherapist, or they go to a therapist like me, as in a last-ditch attempt to not change. People are averse to change. Change is frightening. Change is uncomfortable. But the real reason that you're there in the first place is because something isn't working. So you need change, but at the same time, change seems scary. And the more scared that you are already, the more burned out or exhausted or in split mind you are, the more scary it feels to change. You're at your least courageous in that moment. You've got the least amount of energy. So it's very, very important to look after yourself. Look after yourself physically. Get out. Get a bit of nature if you can. Try and sleep better. The exercise will help you sleep better. Do things which feel right to you in the moment without any judgment. Let the judgment go. You're in pain. Let it go. Even if you can't trust yourself, even if you acknowledge that you do not know whether you are good for yourself in this moment, I assure you there is an element inside which is bigger than that, more beautiful than that, more loving than that, more kind than that, more caring than that. And it is on your side. And when you look at that, you level yourself. You find a point at which, no matter how good or bad you might think you are definitely what you are. In that moment, in that time, with your thought processes, this is what I am, and somehow this is what I have to work with. This is what I am living with. I can rebel against that in my mind if I choose to do so, but it turns out it's still going to be me that's staring me in the mirror. When you placate with that, when you stop struggling against that, and instead you're prepared to stare that in the mirror and go on, give me your best shot. Beauty occurs, love occurs, truth occurs, emotional truth occurs. It's not really true. It's still a relation, it's still an interpretation, it's still a perception. But in that moment, it's your truth. So, don't do what the irony says on the t-shirt. Let's not run away from our problems.
Thank you for listening. If it supported you in some way or helped you to question your inner experience, then follow the show. Personally, I would be really grateful if you might also leave a quick rating. It makes a huge difference in terms of discoverability so that other people who might benefit can find the podcast. If you prefer a visual element, check out Authentic Life Hypnosis on YouTube. And if you're looking for deeper work beyond one-way audio yourself, you're very welcome to reach out. Equally, if you have any questions, I'm here to help. Until next time.